Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. This week we have a Volkswagen Arteon to look at, which is Volkswagen's new top-of-the-line model, and interestingly, it is a hatchback. Some of you who are old enough to recall will remember that there was a time when hatchback was the preferred layout of the economy or the modestly priced car, not a top-of-the-line car. And that's changed somewhat. A lot of higher-end cars now have adopted the hatchback layout for a number of reasons. The chief reason being that conventional sedans with trunks just aren't selling that well, and probably part of the reason for that has to do with the fact that even a large sedan will have a comparatively small trunk and so not much cargo carrying capacity. Typically a full-size sedan will have around 15 or 16 cubic feet maybe of trunk space, and a mid-size sedan will typically have anywhere from 13 to 15, some have 16, but that's not a whole lot when you take into consideration that many crossover SUVs with the same exterior footprint will often have 60 or even 70 cubic feet of total capacity. So Volkswagen decided to make the Arteon their new top-of-the-line sedan that notches one up above the Passat in their lineup, a hatchback, and it has about 3 times the amount of cargo carrying capacity that the Passat has. So that's a really big plus. I think it will help sell the car, which is also a good-looking car, and in addition to that, it's a more powerful car than the Passat. The Passat has kind of been deep-plumed or plucked in a number of ways. One is that it only comes standard now with a lower output version of Volkswagen's turbocharged 2-liter engine. I think it's down to 184 horsepower, something along those lines. Whereas in the Arteon, the power is up to 258 horsepower. Also, you can get the Arteon with Volkswagen's 4Motion all-wheel drive system, whereas the current Passat is front-wheel drive only. Now that may change next year. There's an update on the horizon, but for now at any rate, the 2019 Passat is front-wheel drive only. Now, getting back to power, I wanted to show you something. 2 things actually. First, look at the gauge in the center of this display. A lot of cars have this display that shows things like engine temperature, water temperature, oil pressure, yada yada. Well, in the center there's normally a gauge that shows horsepower, how much power the engine is making at any given time. And if you can take a close gander at this, you'll see it's not horsepower but kilowatts. So if I floor it, you'll see it's however many kilowatts, as in electric car, the gas engine is producing. And I think they're doing that again to habituate people to this idea of an equivalence between internal combustion and electric cars, to make electric cars seem more normal to people. Speaking of something that's not so normal, I'm going to try and do this here before I have to come to a stop. You maybe can see that boost gauge. This little 2-liter engine is fed nearly 31 pounds of boost to get that 258 horsepower out of it. That's a lot of boost. These street cars, family cars, are almost Indy cars in terms of how much pressure the engine's being force-fed. And I think it's going to be interesting as time goes by, and I'm talking about 12, 15 years or longer, to see how well they hold up to that kind of boost. That's a lot of boost. To put it in perspective, I can remember, and this is mid-2000s, really only 8 to 10 years ago, give or take, that very high-performance cars like the Subaru WRX STI and the Mitsubishi Evo, cars like that had heavily turbocharged engines. They were the only ones on the market that had, I don't think they even had 30 pounds. They were close to 30 pounds. They were around 28 pounds, I think. Some of you watching this may be able to correct me or provide some exact information, but I know it was not common recently as 2 or 3 years ago, or certainly 5 years ago, for normal run-of-the-mill everyday family type cars to be running 30 plus pounds of boost. And again, the reason for that is simply that manufacturers are trying to figure out a way to maintain the power and the performance of larger engines like Volkswagen's V6 engine, for example, that's been pretty much taken off the table, while also meeting all of the fuel economy and carbon dioxide. Oh, save the planet, Greta is shaking. nonsense, and it's nonsense that's been used as the pretext for systematically strangling the internal combustion engine. So I think we are reaching kind of a critical mass, because it can't really go much farther. I cannot imagine that they're going to put even smaller and more heavily turbocharged engines into cars like this. You know, for example, instead of a 2-liter engine, maybe a 1.6-liter engine that's jacked up with 35 pounds of boost. I don't think that's going to end well, either for the manufacturer or the buyer. So, you know, it seems like they're just trying to force everybody into these stupid electric cars. And yeah, I use that word deliberately because they are stupid. It's stupid to spend 30 to 50% more for a car, all else being equal, just because it has an electric drivetrain that can only go half, or maybe best case 2/3 as far, ideally, as an equivalent non-electric car, and then takes at least 5 to 6 times as long before you can get it back on the road again. And that does not have even remotely the same useful service life, because of the fact that the battery is going to have to be replaced after about 8 to 12 years, depending on how often it is discharged and then recharged. That's inevitable. That's chemistry. If you don't believe me, look into it. This isn't magic. Lithium-ion batteries are fundamentally no different than the rechargeable batteries that you may have at home to use for things like flashlights and so on, and the laptops, the battery in your laptop and your phone and so on. After a while, after a period of charge and discharge, they can't hold a charge anymore. First they hold less charge, and then eventually they hold almost no charge. And that's not that big a deal when you're talking about a flashlight battery or a laptop battery, because the economics are still viable. It's worth spending the money to put the new battery in the appliance, because the appliance is still worth substantially more than the battery. Problem with electric car batteries is that by the time the thing needs a battery, because it depreciates, the car, just like any other car, the car itself is not worth enough to justify spending the enormous sum that it will take to replace the battery. And this is something that is going to hit people in the face like running into a brick wall when they realize what's in store for them. At any rate, I'll have more up at epautos.com, the web's best libertarian gearhead site. I will be talking with Brian Hyde tomorrow morning over at Loving Liberty Radio in Utah, and then on Wednesday I'll be on again with Bill Meyer at KMED in Oregon, talking about this and other things. So thanks for listening, thanks for reading, and we'll catch up with you again soon.